Hello, good morning and welcome to Sunrise Daily. I'm Chamberlain Usal.
Good morning, I'm Ayo Makinde.
Good morning from Abuja. I'm Maukwe Ogun Yusuf.
Well, just before we get into the dailies, yes, indeed. Well, the development that played out in Kogi at the hospital. Well, take a look at this, listen to this, and then we'll be back.
They brought a pregnant woman this morning at FMC with some people. Then they were telling the doctor to admit the pregnant woman in the labor room. They now said that before they admit the woman, they should go and do coronavirus test. Then the family insists that their person does not have coronavirus. Then the doctors, they refuse to accept the pregnant woman. For the argument then the woman delivered at the front of hospital on the outside the hospital, on the ground, on the empty ground. Nothing like treatment, nothing like caring for the woman. From there, the family of the woman and other people then start to disturb the hospital.
So we're hoping that the relevant bodies, including the Medical and Dental Council, the NMA, all of them need to actually find out what really went down there in Kogi State. And so, because, I mean, you're beginning to see certain developments as a result of this. I mean, much as, well, I know that the Ministry of Health has said before that in cases where you bring in people who have got emergency cases, they don't need to present certain either police reports or whichever report before they're treated because it's an emergency situation. And then it's something that, who knows, we'll see what becomes of that. But you get to see how the papers reflect some of those items as well as we progress. So let's get right to it then. We've got Mr. Daya Kintobi here with us to take us through some of the dailies here this morning. Good to see you again today.
Always a pleasure to be here.
Let's start off with the Vanguard and see the theme, aftermath of shouting match. NASS dares Buhari halts 774,000 jobs program. Remember that scenario that played out between the National Assembly and National Assembly's Joint Committee and Festus Keyamo. But some of the writers in Vanguard newspaper, okay, let's let you see this in case you can't see it on the screen. So the writer here says, asks Buhari to go to court if aggrieved. You don't have the powers, says Keyamo and Senator. So what's your interpretation of how all of this is playing out?
I think that headline might be a bit misleading when it says halts, that the NASS halts the jobs program. I think what they've done is urge the president to suspend the program. I don't think that the National Assembly has the power to stop the program itself. They have a veto over any bill that the president is trying to pass. But in this particular instance, they voted 52 billion naira to fund the program. That's where their involvement ended. But yes, they have oversight responsibilities, which is why they invited the minister to come and explain how the recruitment and selection process is going to work. Now, there was some disagreement and it escalated out of proportion. And as a result, they've now urged the president to suspend the program until they can get better clarity as to the process. I don't think they have the power to halt the program itself.
If they say, we won't approve the funding anymore for this.
It's in the budget, it's approved already.
If they say, well, don't spend.
They can't, the budget is passed, the budget is passed into law already.
What was the purpose of them inviting him to the committee?
Apparently, they felt that the process by which the 1,000 people were going to be selected per local government, and also the committee of 20 in each state that was going to do the selection, they felt it wasn't transparent, and they wanted some explanation as to how the process was going to work. I think the idea behind it is that, how do you in Abuja have an idea of who in each local government is best suited to be recruited? There has to be some sort of local representation as to know who should be selected. It can't be done from Abuja, and so the representatives do have the wherewithal. They do have the purview to say, we want to be involved in the selection process. Perhaps it should have been at the local council level. But even if it's going to be at the local council level, the National Assembly should have some involvement in how that happens.
And how much of that is political? Because perhaps that's the issue that the minister was raising.
Very well, there's an issue about accusations flying back and forth that NASS wants to hijack the process for political purposes, to be the ones to curry the favor from the electorate, because now I've provided jobs to your sons and your daughters. As a result, you now owe me. So when 2023 comes through, I'm now a favorite in your sight because I've done you a favor. So of course, there's political considerations.
But as it is now, we know there was that oversight too from National Assembly about the social special, those SIP program. The National Assembly spoke up about it. It was provided for. Everything was supposed to go smoothly. People also said they didn't have powers to do that, but we know how it ended at the end of the day. They conceded certain grounds to them.
Yes, indeed.
So why shouldn't we think this may go the same way?
In this case, I'll tell you the way it plays out. Legally, Keyamo is right. Politically, he's wrong, and I'll tell you why. What he's done is he's pitted the legislature against the executive by his actions yesterday. That is not a good place to be. The reason is this: the executive needs the legislature for passage of all these programs. It wants to borrow money. It wants to pass budget. They need to be on friendly terms. You don't stick your finger in the eye of somebody that you need his cooperation for you to achieve your objectives. So I think by that, he misstepped a little bit yesterday.
Because now, the decision is that they have said, look, we will suspend this, but in fact, we will not have any dealings anymore with the Minister of State. We will deal with the
substantive minister. Yes, they've asked him to come in.
So they then think this is the way to go. But in the meantime, well, this is what it is. So who knows how this will eventually play themselves out. But just above that one, as you could perhaps see there, 2023, you highlighted that a little bit. We're working to realize Igbo presidency. Ohaneze, Amechi, Izuogu, others, it's an illusion, says ex-Biafran soldier. We must build alliances with others. INC. What's INC? So, everybody's talking about 2023 now. Different groups doing what they have to do. But now, you see this. How do you see this playing now?
I look forward to a time when we will get to a point in Nigeria where we pick a president based on merit, not based on where he's from. I think, yes, there's regional issues, there's ethnic issues. I think we're a very diverse population. But I think to move the country forward, politics needs to be based on merit and not where you're from. The sentiment that we've not had an Igbo presidency in Nigeria since independence might have some merit to it. But I also think that if the candidate, if the Igbos throw up a candidate who is merit-worthy, a candidate who is competent, a candidate who speaks to a broad coalition of Nigerians. I don't think where you come from matters in terms of how you can appeal to the sensibilities of the electorate.
That again speaks to our leadership recruitment process in this country, something that who knows how seriously we take it. By the actions we take, I think that's the way to judge. Anyway, but look at this one as well. How I helped soldiers cut off Wadume's handcuffs, welder tells court. And then FG not shielding soldiers involved in Wadume's case. This is ascribed to the AGF, so some back and forth about this one. But now, this is the stage that they are in the courts now.
Yes, well, it's very clear. It's been clear from the beginning that Wadume had the cooperation of the military in what happened and how it played out. And so now here, under oath, in court, during testimony, somebody claimed that they actually sawed off his handcuffs, welded them off so that he could actually escape. Speaks to the conspiracy that people have been thinking occurred in this instance.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see what happens at the end of the day and how this will affect the impressions people have of what had already played out. Because everybody, they followed this through, they've seen the conclusions at that time, but now at this stage, who knows? But let me take this, look at this, Mr. and Mrs., before I get to the back page. Well, it's COVID era, and then I think they're mindful of that. So Mr. is saying, look, the government just eased the lockdown, so let's buy only important items. For instance, what do you need artificial fingernails and eyelashes for? Looking for trouble. But then Mrs. responds, oh, what do you need shaving sticks and shaving lotions for? So maybe they need to sort themselves out before moving forward. Look at the back page now. I don't need Man City's guard of honor. Klopp, Liverpool won't have it easy. Guardiola, these two are making it exciting for the Premier League to see what happens. Well, yes, title is over, but they need to play for some pride as well.
Absolutely.
City.
Yes.
The Guardian newspaper is next now, and it leads with public water system fails as government spends billions. FCT, Kano, Kogi, Kebi, Ayo, others hit by shortage. Lagos needs 540 million gallons, produces 210 million. Only 10,000 Enugu residents access potable water, and no water supply in Abia since 2007. This is where we are.
Part of the infrastructure deficit we keep talking about. When we say infrastructure, people think more of roads, bridges, gutters, drainage, but things like potable water is critical infrastructure as well. And we're at a point in this country now where a large percentage of the population depends on bore well, borehole, traditional wells, and that's not doing very much for the water table. And the problem with also when we go down into the ground to get our own water is the water is not treated. So public water supply is actually the best source of potable water.
Why did they just say it just fails? It failed a long time ago.
Yeah, it failed a very long time ago. I mean, I know very few people in Lagos who still get their supply from public water. Most people are getting water from private sources. Wow. So it didn't just fail, it's failed a long time ago.
How many years away are we away then from what we signed up for, the Sustainable Development Goals? Water is one of them.
Yes, well, remember in President Obasanjo's time, he put up Vision 2020, and we're in 2020 now, and we're nowhere near one of the top 20 economies in the world that he had thought we would be in 2020. So talking about sustainable development goals, we still have a very long way to go.
Sorry, what about that policy that Lagos State government, I think they came up with this, I don't know if it's still the law, where they're saying, look, no individual drilling of boreholes. They wanted to coordinate that.
Yes, but by the time they came up with that law, most of us already have our boreholes dug already. So this is for anybody who newly wants to do it, but most of us already have it done. So that law is medicine
how will you
after
even know?
death.
How will you even know anyone is drilling that thing in a remote area of Lagos, for instance?
Even in the metropolis, it's impossible to enforce because how do you identify who has? Well, I suppose if they meter all the houses and they see you are not running up your water meter. But that's part of the infrastructure. There are no meters. There are no pipes running water into the home. So how do you know who is using private water?
If anyone knows what is good for us, we better give attention to this because lack of clean water is an epidemic happening, in the making, but God forbid.
Especially in this time of COVID, where water is critical to keeping our hands and our extremities clean and disease-free. Yeah. It is all the more pressing now that water should be readily available.
All right, this one right under the picture you see there, fuel price hits 143 naira 80 kobo per liter. Labor fumes. Are you surprised?
No, because what goes up must go down, what goes down must go up. Back in May, it went from 145 naira to 125. We're all jubilating. At that point, the mechanics make sense because apparently what happened was due to COVID-19 and the slowdown in the world economy, the demand for crude oil dropped. As a result, the pricing on the international market of oil dropped as well. So what that means is that the landed cost of refined fuel goes down because, well, cost of production stays the same, but transportation cost and all these other associated costs reduce. So what the federal government did was say, well, it's costing us less to buy this refined petroleum and bring back to the country. So let's pass that reduction on to the consumer. Very good thing. I think it was a step towards beginning to deregulate and allow free market economics to play for refined fuel to play openly in the free market. Now, oil was $20 in the international market when the price went down to 125. Today oil is $41. Bonnie crude as of yesterday was $41, $42. So all of a sudden it costs more now than it did in May to bring petrol, refined petrol into the country. So of course, the market realities means the landed cost is higher.
So is this really market reality? Because I mean, some are kicking, saying, look, they think this is meddling, interference, because they don't really think that this is how the market forces should determine some of these things. Because what happens when it's about $100 and it gets really high and people just begin to complain because it's going to keep fluctuating. So is this what we'll settle for?
No, because that's why the government says, well, we can't totally hands off. We have to regulate to some extent because we can't allow the thing to go free fall all of a sudden, because now you have a huge spike in the price of oil, pass it on to the consumer. It'll bring too much hardship to the common man, because at the end of the day, there's still transportation costs to consider.
So is there still subsidy then?
There's still subsidy, but we're getting away from it. Look at, when it was 125 naira, there was no subsidy involved, because at that point, the landed cost was less than the pump price. So there was no subsidy. It wasn't necessary.
But it's not that there's subsidy or there is not. They can't tell us there's subsidy today. Tomorrow there's no subsidy. Day after tomorrow, yes, subsidy is back. It's supposed to be budgeted for, isn't it?
They will cushion the effect of vagaries in the market.
You know, all of this is going to all of this will be exposed in due time, because as Chamberlain said, when the price of oil rises and labor, you know, of course, labor is fuming now. Our natural reaction hitherto to fuel price increases, strikes and labor actions and all of that, I don't know if that is not going to happen again, but that's the front page. And let's leave it there for the Guardian newspaper this morning. For now, Mark.
Let's quickly look at leaderships for you, and you see there concerns over sustainability of Nigeria's polio-free status. They have a number of riders underneath that story, which I'm going to quickly run through before we come back to the headline. It says, global war against epidemic not yet over, Rotary experts warn. Routine immunization must continue, say Senate Health Minister. Measures in place to curb resurgence, as according to the NPHCDA, that's the National Primary Healthcare Agency. US, that's the United States, buys up global stock of COVID-19 drug remdesivir. Sultan can declare 3-day fasting prayer against pandemic. Governor Okowa wife test positive. 87 inmates in Katsina police cell test positive. Kano sacks 368 workers. 172 Nigerians evacuated from Uganda, Kenya arrive in Abuja, and domestic flights resume July 8th. Those are all the riders they have right underneath that story. Concerns over sustainability of Nigeria's polio-free state. How concerned are you that now that we have been declared polio-free, we will be able to stay polio-free?
Well, I think part of the problem with being able to sustain this has to do with the way we live. I think issues like when we were talking about public water being available, deficiencies in our healthcare infrastructure. It's a good thing to be polio-free, and they've had programs where they've gone around vaccinating children and babies. To keep it out of the country requires a concerted effort of healthcare practitioners, vaccination, funding, and I think that the political will is there, because I think it was a very major coup for us to have been able to achieve this milestone to begin with. So I think the political will is there to make sure that we keep this out. I think the focus on COVID at the moment might have detracted from the polio issue, but I think that the political will is there from the health infrastructure to keep polio at bay. I also know we have a lot of international support. Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation put a lot of money into helping to eradicate polio in Nigeria, and I think they're committed to continue to work with us to sustain our polio-free status.
leadership seems to be quite concerned with health this morning. They also have this one: 12 million Nigerians enrolled in NHIS as HMOs or hospitals. So you find that story right there. Looking just beneath the story, you see federal government okays 10 billion naira for Gombe, Adamawa, Kogi roads. You see the story there. 2023, Naba, Utomi, Ezekwesili, others unveil new movement. That story broke yesterday, and this is all, of course, towards 2023 or maybe even beyond. But how hopeful are you that a new coalition might be, what Nigerians might need, different from the two major parties, the APC and the PDP?
Well, people are generally disillusioned with the political process as it has played out the last several years. So if a group of seasoned, proven, competent Nigerians have come together and said, let us negotiate a new political ideology. I think part of the problem with politics in Nigeria is that we don't have political ideologies per se. The different political parties are not formed around specific principles. They might be formed based on ethnicity, they might be formed based on common political interests, but there is no overriding ideology like conservatism or liberalism or what foundational underpinning guides our togetherness. And I think this new movement is trying to say, let us center ourselves around a collective understanding that speaks to how we think governance should take place. Let it not just be a strictly political or pecuniary interest that holds us together, but let us negotiate an understanding about how governance should run.
All right, let's look at the next one now. Nigerian Tribune. Domestic flights resume July 8th in Abuja, Lagos airports, Kano, Port Harcourt, Owerri, Maiduguri, July 11. Other airports, July 15. It's a big one this morning. So, are we ready for this?
Yes, I think the thing about COVID that we've got to come to terms with is that it's going to be with us for some time, whether we like it or not. So we have to learn how to live with it and move on with our lives. It is important that we put the right preventative measures in place in all aspects of the economy and let life go on. We can't continue to stagnate. So I think the aviation authorities and the government have looked at the situation and feel like they can prevent transmission through the aviation system, and as such it's time to open up the skies again. I think it's a good thing. I think it's a shot in the arm for the economy. I think it'll help people's jobs. I think it'll help businesses to flow better. I think by and large it's a good thing. I don't think we're at any greater risk traveling by air than we are going to the market
Really?
on the ground here.
Okay. Daily Times, we still have that one as well.
Yes, Daily Times leads with, of course, the petrol price story. FG increases petrol pump price to 143 naira 80 kobo. We talked about that already. But then right beside the picture, you see there a number of stories. Senate mulls blocking revenue losses through money laundering, tax evasion, and on and on. You find that story on page 3. So many other stories to look at, but yes, we're out of time.
Really. Well, just take all the money from my pocket. Let's know that, yeah, you want to get money from government. Time when they give it. But yeah, we know they have to do what they have to do. But then, look, there needs to be a balance of all of these things because, I mean, people working really hard and those who are evading taxes, who are getting so much money. Is there any such thing as political tax? Should there be any such thing?
I don't know. I can't tell you that one.
All right, indeed. Always a pleasure to have you on Mr. TV. Well, back in a moment, everyone. Stay with us. Welcome back. Yes, indeed. We are still on that deferred electricity tariff hike. And we've got Mr. Sonny Iroche joining us via Zoom this morning. He's a former executive director of finance and accounts for the Transmission Company of Nigeria. Good morning. Thank you for joining us today. Well, quite a number of issues have been raised by the senators who we just heard, and then, of course, the public consumers always have their views about this. But given the way this is playing out, I mean, there are those who have described this, deferring that planned increase as postponing the evil day. But from your perspective, what do you think, what's your interpretation of how this is playing out?
Thank you very much, Chamberlain. If you recall that on the 27th of May, exactly Children's Day, when I was on this channel, I had cautioned that the hike in electricity bill at this time would be very unwise and untimely, to be so insensitive, particularly considering this COVID-19 pandemic. Well, like we've always said, for the electricity industry to remain solvent, there must be cost-reflective tariff. It is as simple as ABC, because electricity is like any other product. It is like buying a drink, buying a fish, buying whatever commodity it is that you use. You must consider and factor in the cost of production. Those who invested in the electricity assets, that is the generation companies and the distribution companies, are there to make their money and make some profit. They are not asking for too much, but again, they must also provide to the consumer stable, reliable, and efficient power before they can ask for an increment in tariff. But again, it's like a chicken and an egg situation. The discos are by law given by the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, NEC, that they cannot spend more than $250 million as their capex, their capital expenditure in more than 5 years, which would be captured in their tariff. Then if that leaves them with about $50 million a year, that can hardly do anything in their equipment sourcing and providing power to Nigerians. Federal government of Nigeria also, in the agreement, the sale agreement of these assets, the unbundled PHCN, have some role to play. They guaranteed to deliver to the discos minimum of 5,000 megawatts of power, which they have failed to do over the years. And so it's just a chicken and an egg situation.
So if I could comment at that point, part of the consideration or what they want to be considered as well is that, yes, much as the tariff, cost-reflective tariff is desirable for the investors, but they also think, look, yes, you can do all of those, but whatever happens to service? Because if we're having to reflect that tariff, we have to pay premium and good attention as well to service delivery, which many say that is a missing component, or we're glossing over that.
Okay, let us look at it holistically. Now, what you and I are paying off-grid are cost-reflective. We buy diesel, we buy petrol, whatever kind of generator that you're using to supply power to your offices or your residences. You are invariably paying a cost-reflective tariff, albeit that it is off-grid and you are the one generating it. Self-generation comes with hazard of sound and air pollution that are very, very hazardous. And now to answer your question directly, yes, there is need for level service agreement between consumers of electricity and the suppliers. Who supplies the distribution companies their power? It is from the Transmission Company of Nigeria, TCN, that evacuates the power that has been generated by the generation companies. Who supplies the generation companies their source of power. It is either hydro or thermal. But a lot of our power generated is generated by thermal, which is gas. And the gas suppliers that have gas supply agreements are also being owed. It is simple. Let everyone in the value chain of power do their own bit as enshrined in the sale agreement, the agreement that governs the privatization of the old PHCN. Federal government, through transmission company, which is the only market participant that is still under the control and purview of the federal government, you deliver minimum of 5,000 megawatts of power to the discos, and let us not give the discos any excuse whatsoever. If you play your own part, you do your own part as
that's the way some may say that's where the challenge is, the conditional clause there. And the analogy you gave about upgrade, because people say, look, that varies. On the one hand, first is that if I get diesel and get the generating set, put all of those things, I know that, look, it is the amount of diesel I have that can sustain until that is exhausted, that service will be provided. So in this case, if we're paying 20,000 naira, for instance, you get your card and you load it with that figure, and some are saying, look, the discos themselves have got to equally let that argument be there as well. If we agree to supply a certain amount and you don't deliver it, what happens at the end of the day? Because I think everybody wants to pay for electricity supply if they can get it. I don't think that's enough. They disagree with that.
By the time the market becomes efficient and everybody plays their role, then we get to the next level of signing an LSA, a level service agreement between, for instance, Mr. Iroche in Lagos and Eko Disco. If perchance, due to their inefficiency or lack of supply, my equipment gets damaged or the food in the freezer gets bad, I should be able to sue. I should be able to demand compensation for the failure of whichever distribution company that it is. But then it should be a chain reaction. The discos should be able to sue TCN for not delivering what they ought to deliver to the letters of the agreement. Nigeria is not operating in a vacuum. I keep saying this. Electricity is being generated, transmitted, and distributed all over the world. I said to someone yesterday, I said, this is a country, the only country that I know of, that I'm aware of, that discusses power, is a disco, genco, gas aggregator, embed. In any part of the world, nobody does that. Just switch on your light and there is light. So, but I think for me, I'm optimistic that with the PPI, with the Siemens AG of Germany, the challenges of transmission and the challenges of distribution should be sorted out if we apply our minds to it.
I mean, we already hear that there might be some issues with installing, when we talk about that deal with Siemens, installing, maintenance and what have you. But, talking about, the Genco aspect, the transmission company and the discos, I've never quite come to understand why we have an installed capacity on one hand of, let's say, 7,500. In fact, sometimes they say they produce like 8,000 and above megawatts. And eventually, when you get to distribution, it's barely 4,000. I've never quite understood why there's always that challenge, installed capacity, the wheeling, and then what is distributed. I know that you've said that this isn't what we should be talking about, segmenting the market, but that is the challenge. What exactly is the issue with that?
Okay, let's talk about it. When most of these generation companies were built by the old NEPA, they had installed capacity that, yes, these plants, for instance, EGMI or any of the GENCOs, they install capacity on delivery, on completion, should be 2,000 megawatts, for example. I'm just using this because hypothetically. And EGME should have 6 turbines. But for whatever reason, at times, they're only operating on 3 turbines. So the real capacity, generation capacity, is different from what is installed, right? You understand what I'm saying? It's simple. Each GENCO has an installed capacity that is not what they are capable of generating because of one fault or the other, either a broken turbine or they have to step down because the discos cannot take it, because electricity cannot be stored. Electricity cannot be stored. Once it's generated, it has to go through the entire process of transmission and distribution. If the discos, for whatever reason, whatever challenges they're having, cannot distribute the power that is being evacuated by transmission, then there'll be system failure. The system will fail. Electricity, once generated, must go all through the course to be delivered. Therefore, at times, the control tower in Osogbo, the national control tower in Osogbo, would tell the GENCOs to step down generation because there is a fault somewhere between the line. Either TCN cannot transmit or the discos are rejecting load. So it's an integral problem. So in a nutshell, GENCOs generate, whatever they generate should be evacuated, and whatever is evacuated should be delivered to the discos for distribution to residential and commercial users. If this does not happen in a seamless manner, it will lead to system collapse. You cannot store the electricity anywhere. So installed capacity of generation companies is anything between 10,000 to 11,000 megawatts installed capacity that they can do. But do they do that? No. At times I hear it runs from anything from 4,000, 5,000 to 6,000, depending on what the transmission lines can take. The transmission line at best has done about 5,300 megawatts, and it doesn't stay for too long. The system will shut down, will collapse. Therefore, the GENCOs must be monitoring the capacity of TCN, and TCN also, if it is okay, if everything is okay on the transmission side, will be monitoring what the discos are doing. So if the discos shut down and reject load, there's nothing you can do about it.
I mean, you've tried to paint a picture, and I can imagine really the mess, if I can use that term, especially because we could do better than this, like you have said. But then, you know, some say insolvency is a challenge of the sector. I recall in 2015, the tariff was increased, for example, and people were hoping that we'll stop rejecting these loads, as you have said, but it didn't get better till 2020. In fact, from the 3,000 megawatts that was being rejected, according to a report by the GENCOs, it grew to almost about 5,000 being rejected. So tariffs were increased, but the rejection still continued in court. So is insolvency really the problem of the sector?
If you sell a product less than your cost of production, you'll go insolvent. It's the same thing with electricity. What should happen is we should bite the bullet once and for all. Much after COVID, not now. What we should have done before COVID came, we did not do. But now people are really under serious financial stress. So to come and add the burden of an increased tariff would not make political and economic sense at all. So we should use this period to make sure we fine-tune everything. Allow the discos to invest as much as they want to invest in capacity building, technical and human capacity, their lines, their transformers, etc. Federal government, as we speak, is the largest single owner of all these discos. They own 40% of these discos. If you allow them to spend what they require to improve their services and then later charge cost-reflective tariff. We keep saying cost-reflective tariff. What is cost-reflective? It is to take total cognizance of the cost that has been put in generating 1 megawatt hour of power to a home. It costs X amount plus a margin of profit that investors who have borrowed monies from banks and who are putting their equity, like any other business, expect to get certain returns that are controlled. It's
Concerning
not
that
just
tariff, pardon me to jump in, is cost-reflective tariff fixed or is it a moving target?
It should be a moving target, really. If cost of production, for instance, goes down, if the price of gas goes down, it should reflect in the tariff. That's what it means. When the crude oil price went down a couple of weeks ago, the DPR, the Federal Department of Petroleum Resources, had to reduce the pump price of petrol. Same thing applies to electricity.
One of the sectors in the power sector chain is the discos that you've talked about, which of course is the subject of all this tariff increase thing. And as a practitioner, you would know one of the challenges that's been talked about is this metering. I think you referenced it earlier as well. So there's the challenge of revenue collection by the discos. What's the assurance that tariff increase, because there are some who believe in the sector that tariff increase is not going to solve the problem if revenue collection by the discos is not resolved, which is a challenge at this point. How do you see that those two issues playing out against themselves? On the one hand is the challenge of the revenues being collected by the discos, and now we talk about tariff increase. So if tariffs increase, how are we sure that that will solve the problem?
Good question. There are myriads of problems in the power sector. There's not just one problem. They are all interconnected. First, we talk about aggregate, technical, commercial, and collection losses, ATC and C. In other climes, it just stops at ATC, aggregate, technical, commercial losses. When electricity is moved from point A to point B, there are bound to be natural losses. Those are the technical losses. Then the commercial loss is when it gets to the transformers and people are bypassing their meters and not wanting to pay. That is collection. People don't pay. People bypass meters. People connect power from other people's sources. That is stealing electricity. Electricity theft is so high in Nigeria. It's one of the highest in the world. And our tariff also is one of the lowest, even in Africa. The tariff in Nigeria is one of the lowest. So what to do is, if the discos deploy meters, they will run foul of their agreed capex. That is the capital expenditure in a year. Ideally, Nigerians should be metered. If 80% to 90% of consumers are metered in Nigeria, then the problem will be solved. A bottle of soft drink is measured. A bottle of water, table water, is measured. It has 7 CL, whatever it is. The measure of electricity is 1 megawatt hour, and it costs X amount. It can be done. In some estates in Lagos, for instance, residents are now signing agreements with distribution companies for a minimum of 18 hours of power, and they are paying a premium for it. They prefer paying a premium for grid supply than go into their generator. It comes out cheaper at the end of the day. So, in summary, let the regulators be up and doing with their job and look at what is a fair tariff for electricity in Nigeria. Then after that is done, let us now have level service agreements between we, the users of power, and the suppliers, and see if they will not be up and doing in their responsibility to their consumers.
It's looking like it's we still have some measure of way to go there, Mr. Richard. But some have also argued in the sector that maybe the whole thing is over centralized. Of course, we know that power sector is under the list where it's only the president or the federal government that can deal with it. Do you see a future or reform where the GENCOs, the TRANCOs, and the DISCOs are decentralized within states and regions, so that the states or the regions have control as opposed to the federal government having all the power, so that the problems can be dissipated and the solutions can be dissipated accordingly?
The problem lies with our attitude as a people. Some of the states run schools. Are those schools better than the privately run schools? The answer is no. There are so many things that these so-called regions and states are supposed to do that they don't do. But when it comes to electricity, it's a common thing. It's common to all of us because everyone sees it. Having said that, you cannot move the hydro generation from Shiroro Dam, for instance, or from the Jeba Dam. What you can do is, okay, let us regionalize a transmission. And already as it is, transmission company is in 8 regions in Lagos, in Nigeria. You have the Lagos region, you have the Bauchi region, you have the Enugu region, you have all the regions. What needs to be done is to upgrade the transmission capacity from the current radial system to a loop system. We are still using what can be coterminous with analog instead of the digital form of power until we get away from the radial system and loop all our transmission system, whether you regionalize them or not, or 36 transmission companies in all the 36.
We do have our work cut out for us, because even if we get onto the cost-reflective tariff today, it's not a guarantee that we will have the stable or uninterrupted power supply tomorrow. So that's what this is all coming down to. Well, we do thank you. Well, I'm afraid we'll need to go, Mr. Roche. Yeah,
okay,
well,
thank you very much,
we'll see how we can keep this conversation going at a later date. Thank you for your time today. Mr. Sonny Roche is a former Executive Director of Finance and Accounts for Transmission Company of Nigeria, TCN. Well, back in a moment, we'll turn our attention to something that, yes, concerns the lockdown. Stay with us. Welcome back. Well, yes, indeed, we've seen the news that domestic flights will resume July 8th in Abuja and Lagos, and then you find the ones for Owerri, Port Harcourt, and the rest following suit. Yes, indeed, the Kano, Port Harcourt to Maiduguri will be on the 11th of July. Other airports, July 15. So, to talk to us about that is Captain Ado Sanusi, who is the MD CEO of Aero Contractors. He joins us via the Zoom this morning. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. Now, with this story...
good morning, and thank you for having me.
So, how should we react to this? Should we be cautiously optimistic, or we should just be gleeful about this?
No, I think we should continue to be cautiously optimistic about the startup. And I really commend the Nigerian Civil Aviation and the Federal Ministry of Aviation for this cautious approach into startup of the aviation industry. This shows that after the ease of the interstate travel, they opened 2 airports, and they did not say that the airports, all the airports are open. And there was a lot of dry runs. There was a lot of protocols that the airlines need to follow so that we can cautiously start the aviation industry. The aviation industry is a very regulated industry, and it's an industry that we have to get it right while we're starting it. And we have told the flying passengers that when they are inside that aircraft, they are very safe.
Okay, so with that dry run, what do we expect? Does that suggest that the normal passengers, their capacity will be halved. Is that the case? And how is this going to reflect? I think they already said the tariff, the airfares is going to go up. Will that be the case eventually?
I don't believe, because we are still in discussion with the Civil Aviation Authority, but I don't believe that we're going to have reduced capacity or we're going to block the middle seat of a single aisle airplane. My belief is that we should base our decision with the facts that are data driven or science behind any decision we're going to make. The World Health Organization have made it very clear that the physical distancing should be 2 meters. Now, we cannot achieve 2 meters inside a single aisle airplane. So, the seat is at most 55 inches. So they said if you cannot achieve physical distancing, then you must wear your facial mask. What I want to even also point out is the flying public should understand that we have gone through a 3-layered approach to ensure that whenever they are seated inside the aircraft, they will be very, very safe. The 3-layered approaches are: first, we try and not allow the virus to be on board the airplane. Secondly, we have a clean airplane. And third, if we have an index passenger, then our crew are trained to make sure that the risk of transmitting that COVID-19 inside the airplane is brought down to zero. And these are what we have been doing over the months that we are closed down. We've been studying it, we have been looking at the data, and we have been making decisions based on science-driven or data-driven, not based on sentiments or based on emotions or psychology. So first, if you are going to enter the airplane, your temperature will be taken. You will be given a hand sanitizer. You will wear a mask. And then the airflow in the airplane also helps to make sure that the transmission is reduced to minimum in case there's an index passenger that enters the airplane. So I don't think, and I do not see the reason why we should reduce capacity in a single aisle airplane. I believe if there is a data that says that if you have 100 passenger airplane and you reduce it to 50, then the reduction of transmission will be this number of percentage. Then we can make a decision. But as of now, the World Health Organization have said 2 meters, and we cannot achieve 2 meters in a single aisle airplane.
So, having seen that dry run, what should we expect in terms of seating in the airport?
That's you see
in the
airport
plane.
system.
Not the head, not the aisle. I mean, right inside.
Okay, in the airplane, we will, of course, depending on the passenger numbers, but we will try and spread as much as we can inside the airplane. But as I said, we cannot achieve a 2-meter distance between one passenger to another. Bearing in mind that when a passenger decides to use the restroom, he will definitely be close to another passenger. So, but if there is, let's say, a 50 or 60% capacity, of course, there will be, we'll try and spread the passengers all over the place. And that is not based on science. That's just based on emotions and psychology of the passengers. Bearing in mind that World Health Organization said, if you cannot achieve the 2 meters, then wear face mask. Everybody must wear face mask. And also, I would like to point out that even if you have malaria or you have common cold, do not come to the airport, because there is high possibility that you are not going to be allowed boarding. You're going to be denied boarding. So this is the new normal that we're going to see. The main thing for airlines is to make sure that the airplane itself is very safe. And that's what we're doing. And that's why we still believe that air transportation is the safest way to travel.
This is a little dicey, I'm sure you'll agree. One of the signs of COVID-19 is cold, sneezing. And there are people who are naturally allergic to cold once they get into the aircraft, and of course cold air blows them. There's the tendency to sneeze. And when that happens, there is panic in the aircraft. Did this rehearsal, factor that drama into play?
Of course, we did. Of course, that's why I said the three-layered approaches is in the event an index passenger is on board, our crew are trained to isolate and make sure that we calm the other passengers down. So if we see anybody sneezing, we will take him as an index passenger. We're not saying that he has allergy, no. We're going to take him as an index passenger till we have handed him over to Port Health. Port Health trained personnel that will do the test will be the ones to determine whether he's allergic or he has the COVID-19. So if a passenger has allergy and then he started sneezing, we are going to take him as an index passenger, and there are protocols for that. We have made arrangements in the airplane to isolate and to make sure that he is well taken care of. We're not stigmatizing the passenger, but we're making sure that his health and the health of all the passengers are all taken care of.
What if the passenger?
Bear in mind that.
Pardon me. What if the passenger comes through? My apologies. What if the passenger comes with a doctor's note saying, "Look, this is malaria. He's been checked. He doesn't have any COVID, so he can fly." Will the airlines allow that?
My airline will not allow a passenger that comes with a
malaria,
with a doctor's report that I have malaria. Yeah, a doctor's report that says I have malaria. I would rather have him come with a COVID-19 test that he is free. Then I will take that. But I will not allow a passenger to come and say, "Oh, I have malaria," because we have seen passengers that have said, "Well, we have malaria," or not passengers, patients that have said we have malaria and ended up it's COVID-19 because the symptoms are very similar. So I would rather have a passenger come and say, "Okay, I have COVID-19 free certificate, which is only valid for 4 days for what we see internationally." And if that is valid for 4 days, then we will say, okay, if you have fever, we might look at it. But I look at it this way. Why do you want to risk it? I mean, we are in a very difficult times. If you have malaria, please sit at home. And when you get better, then you can travel.
Captain, you know that the signs for COVID-19 doesn't show immediately. And you also know that the cabin aggravates any symptoms that anyone might have because of pressurization. If this was also factored in and the person's condition gets aggravated while airborne, what happens?
As I said, we have what we call, in case we have an index passenger on board, what are the protocols we follow, which we have done that several in our dry runs. But the symptoms of COVID-19 as it can be aggravated, or they cannot even show any symptoms, because there are somatic patients that don't show any kind of symptoms. But if somebody, as I said, if somebody enters the airplane and starts showing symptoms, COVID-19, there are protocols which we will ask him to to please leave his seat, or allow people that are sitting next to him to get back, or we take him to the isolation point in the airplane, which will be identified. And then we will, of course, make sure that he's isolated, and all passengers, the protocols are there. On all passengers, by the time we land, will go out first. And then we will call the Port Health authorities to come and take him out, all within the protocols. But you have to understand that we are talking about 45 minutes to 1 hour flight max. That is what we're talking about. I mean, the highest point you can fly in this country is between Lagos and maybe Yola or Maiduguri, which is 1 hour, 20 minutes. So we are not talking about 5 hours of flight time. We're talking about 45 to 1 hour flight time. And what we're saying is, on that time, please be seated in your airplane, the airplane as you are always, and with your seatbelt on and your face mask on. By that, and the airflow in the airplane, which is flowing from the top and then going to the bottom and sucked from the bottom, and filtered through 4 to 5 high-grade filters that is used in operating theaters. And then inject new air into the system, the risk of transmission inside the airplane is reduced drastically. In fact, if not eliminated completely.
When you talk about people that show symptoms, the other side to that is the fact that a lot of people are also asymptomatic, and it's quite tricky factoring that in also. But regarding the sitting arrangement and the middle aisle and all that, you say yes, it's hard to maintain physical distancing of 2 meters, but some will say maybe 0.5 meters might do, or 1 meter might do. I know you're saying that this is based on science and not emotions, but people are saying maybe the cost is also factored in. The airlines are thinking, well, we don't want to make more losses. We have made enough losses. So let's just, bring people together, wear your masks. We'll be fine. An hour, less than an hour. Let's get to our destination. Is that the thinking?
No, not at all. As I said, our decisions are data-driven, facts and science. Believe me, if we have data that shows that if we reduce the number of seats or we block the center seats, it will reduce the rate of the transmission, then we would do that, and then we increase the flight because somebody must pay for the center seat. Then we will increase the cost of tickets. That is how international. That is how it would have gone through. So International Airline Association (IATA) and International Civil Aviation Organization have looked at it, and the World Health Organization have looked at it to see whether the data suggests that if you reduce this 2 meters, you are going to reduce maybe to 0.5, as you said. And you wear masks, there is a data that shows yes, the transmission is reduced. Of course, we would have seen that data, and then we would have made a decision based on that. And of course, the tickets fare would have gone up because somebody would pay for the seat in between.
So what do we expect? Will there be 2 people on a 3 seat and then the middle one will be empty, or will it be 1 person on that row? What should we expect moving forward?
Well, you expect first a clean airplane. You expect, secondly, a very safe airplane that will transport you from point A to B. And in the sitting arrangement, what you should expect is if the airplane is not full, you will spread all over the cabin. It's not going to be packed in. Bearing in mind that the sitting arrangement is also very key to the weight and balance of the airplane. So all these things are, as I said, are highly regulated, because we can't say, okay, we're going to block the center seat. Then we must go back and do more calculation on the weight and balance of the aircraft. The center of gravity of the aircraft will change and all that. But as your question, what do you expect? You expect a very safe airplane, and you expect that if the airplane is not full, you're going to have free sitting to make sure that passengers are comfortable. And they are not being, the passengers are not seen as being clustered together, and the risk is high. But I mean, as I said, we are making the decision based on data, not emotions or psychology.
When it comes to issues of safety, nobody can argue with you on that. So when you talk about the center of gravity and balance, well, we can let you have that, definitely. But the money, of course, we know it's a major consideration. But I recall when the PTF, visited for that dry run, and it was said that the airports are almost 90% ready. So it's not 90% really, and we don't know what that almost really means. So apparently, there's still that margin of error. And the big question is, what is being done? Obviously, we're not 100% ready or 99.9% ready. So what are those areas, loopholes, and how are you planning to fill them?
What we have seen in the dry run is there are some small, very, very minor areas that need to be adjusted. The time of arrivals of airplane and time of departures must be staggered, and the time at which the processed passengers must be looked at to shorten it. The turnaround times of the aircrafts must be increased so that we can do disinfecting immediately after passengers have been dropped. There are so many things that we have looked at, but the dry run actually gave us a very good insight of what we will expect, and I think that is why the Honourable Minister said on the 8th would be the time to open the airports. Meanwhile, it's just opening the airports. We are not, the airlines are not starting till they fulfill all the protocols that the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority have laid it down for the airlines. So yes, there are few things that we have seen, and I believe we're working on it with FAN, Federal Airports Authority of Nigeria. We're working closely with them, and they have done a fantastic job, believe me, to have transformed the airports into what they have, knowing fully well where we were before COVID-19. And I believe this 10 or 11% that you are talking about would have been addressed in the few days to come.
Well, it's definitely going to be a kind of shock to the system when many people who were not at the dry run get to the airports to see some of the changes that they have to get used to. One of them is the use of the trays at the airports. You know, touch and all of that. Those are things that we're supposed to avoid. How is that going to play out?
I said the passenger processing. We have seen that and they have to wear protective equipment. So the fund security officials, when they pat you down when you go through the metal detector, because we are not going to compromise security and the safety of passengers, not at all. So we have seen that yes, there is that delay. Because as you said, the tray where you put your telephones and everything must be disinfected, and there is very limited touch points in the airport. And when there is, there will be disinfection continuously. And those are the points that we said it would take a little more time to process one passenger.
Now, about the purification of the air and clean aircrafts, interior. I mean, we've seen some other countries, they talk about having these HEPA level filters. Do we have any such here? Because some of them say they purify air every 2 minutes for the entire duration of the flights. What do we have installed here?
Well, they are the same aircrafts that is flown in Europe and America that we're flying here in Nigeria. It's the 737. Most airplanes that are flown in this country are Boeing 737, 500, 300s, and they are the same. They have the same HEPA filters. Some of them have 4, some of them have 5 stages of filtering. Some of them are 2 minutes filtering the air. Some of them are even less than 2 minutes. And they filter the air, and a greater percentage of the air that comes back into the cabin is actually fresh air. So the same things that you hear internationally about how safe the airplane is, how clean the airplane is the same we're having here. We're not having any aircraft that is substandard. The 5 or the 4 HEPA filters that we have are the same. And we have also gone further. To be changing the filters periodically. Maybe before now we were changing the filters in probably 12 months. Now we're changing them in less than 90 days. So we have done a lot based on maintenance behind the scene to ensure that we have a clean aircraft. As I said, this 3-layered approach that the airlines took for this COVID-19 is very, very beautiful, because as I said to you, we try and keep the virus away from the airplane. We make a clean airplane, and in the event we have an index passenger, we have trained crew to make sure that the COVID-19 spread is brought down to even 0.
Okay, well, a lot of people are sending in questions because they're concerned as well. And this one from Mercy Bauer says, does that mean persons with medical conditions cannot travel for medical treatment by air? I recall we talked about that earlier, but can you clear that part also?
No, if you have medical conditions and you have a medical report and you want to fly, you don't want to use an ambulance, of course you will have a doctor or a doctor's report that will show that, yes, these are what you have, and these are the things that you need, and if there's any special need for you, it will be provided. You can travel. I said that for common cold, malaria, that you don't have any medical report, then I would suggest you shouldn't come to the airport, because there's high risk that you will not be allowed boarding. So, but if you have a medical condition and you're going for medical treatment, then definitely you have a medical report. Then of course you will need a medical assistance or something to come with you, and if you have that, you'll be allowed to board.
Okay, well, some still want to hear about some of these money issues. They think, first of all, they've heard some of the members of the committee say we expect that the fares, the ticketing may go up in terms of the fares. But they equally want to know, some of those watching, if they have an old ticket, is it still relevant? Will it be useful?
Okay, let me take the first question. The tickets, the fares for the tickets will go up because just recently, the Federal Airports Authority of Nigeria have increased the passenger service charge to 2,000 naira from 1,000 naira. So that alone is an increase in ticket by 1,000 naira. And then the issue of tickets, all tickets bought pre-COVID-19 could be used at least for my airline could be used without any penalty. And if you want a refund, yes, we would give the refund. So there is could be used. You can reroute the ticket. You can reschedule the ticket. You can do anything with the ticket bought pre-COVID-19. And we have made it very clear to all the passengers, at least for aero contractors. And I believe it is also for all airlines that all tickets will be treated pre-COVID-19 will be treated as an open ticket. So I don't think we'll have an issue to that.
So let's talk about the crew now, because this question also from Shoni B asking that, yes, I mean, you've talked about measures for passengers, but what about the cabin crew, the pilots? Will they be tested on, I mean, per flight also, because people are concerned about their status as well? And regarding staffing, I know that the aviation sector has been hit, like I said earlier on, a lot. So how are you grappling with that? But first, about the testing of crew and staff members.
Yes, we have toyed with the idea of testing crew members maybe every 3-4 days with a rapid test, which we call it a molecular test that we thought will go a long way. But what we have realized is that the accuracy, or they call it the sensitivity of that test, is only 75%. Meaning, if you test a crew, there will be 15. If you test 100 crew, there will be 15 of those crew that will either test positive while they are negative, or they will test negative while they are positive. So, and that is not acceptable. So what we have done, and is internationally agreed, is that we try as much as possible to protect the crew by wearing protective equipment. And we also, there is a checklist that they follow every morning that will look at where you have been, what are do you have any symptoms and everything. You fill all that checklist. And we are also in talks with the Civil Aviation Authority to see whether we will do a periodic test for the crew. And we have also reduced the number of times there is contact with the passengers with the crew. As I said, we are not going to be serving food. The water that will be served will be placed in the seat pocket in front of the passengers. So all those and all the protocols, because the crew are also trained by the World Health Organization to make sure that they are safe as they conduct their duties. So we have done a lot on the protocols of the crew, because we take our crew very important, and we believe they have enough protective equipment that will protect them from the COVID-19.
Okay,
now regarding okay, you want to say something?
Yeah, we need to go soon, but I think you've broken the number of hearts just saying that you'll not be serving food, because they'll be looking forward to that. What's the protocol without them serving the food?
They won't be serving of food, because that will increase the number of times you contact the passengers, and then the passengers will be removing their face masks to eat the food. So I think it is not the best. It's a 1-hour flight. It's only in Nigeria that we serve food for a 1-hour flight. Go anywhere in the world, you will see that 1-hour flight you start serving hot meal. No. So it's a 1-hour flight.
Well, Captain, yes, it's 1 hour, but people don't play with their stomach, But then, do we expect NCDC officials at the scene as well?
Yes, of course. You mean to be inside the airplane?
Supervisory, either inside the process while the process is on.
I believe they will be monitoring all the flights and the airports, the systems that we are following, and if they see there's any flaw, they will advise us. Yeah, definitely. And regarding the staff, as you mentioned, yes, we are also working with the federal government to see whether we will get soft loan to ensure that we don't lay off many staffs.
Okay. All right, then. Thank you very much indeed for your time this morning. Captain Ado Sanusi is the
Thank
MD
you.
CEO of Aero Contractors. We're back in a moment and talk about where we are, what stage, what do we do moving forward. Stay with us.
18 local governments out of the 774 local governments that are considered to be high burden with this infection. They account for 60% of the figure you have of the 24,077 infections. Those 18 local governments account for 60% of those figures. And the reason for the precision lockdown is to in place in those places specific measures that will be administered by the state governments and the local authorities. It's not for the federal government, it is the responsibility of the state governments and the local authorities to put in place measures which might be similar to the first response we had of the total lockdown of those communities. And now aggressively collect samples, test those that are found infected before the transmission continues in that particular community. They are taken into isolation. We brought in the National Primary Healthcare Development Agencies because they are the ones that are custodians to the primary healthcare centers that are located all over the country. We have a total of over 10,000 primary healthcare centers located all over the country. This is the time to ramp them in, to bring them in for the purposes of really dealing with the community infections so that they are empowered, they are capacitated in such a way that the tracing and the tracking of people infected in the communities can now be hastened. And once they are tested and they are positive, they are taken out of the community and brought into isolation for the purposes of care and management.
Welcome back. Well, Dr. Godwin Otafon joins us now. He is the Chief Epidemiologist of Nigeria from Abuja Studios. Good morning. Thank you for joining us today on the program. Well, yes, the authorities, everyone, at least they say they're doing what they can to ensure keep us all safe. Could you give us a picture? Where are we in this whole scenario in terms of getting us safe at the moment?
Good morning, Mr. Chamberlain. It's my pleasure to be here, really. Like you've seen, from what you've just shown, the cases are increasing, but that is not to say that the situation is getting bad, no. In the past few weeks, you will see that there has been a sudden increase in the number of test sites. So more cases are being tested, and that is actually what is leading to the increase. But when you look at it generally, you compare what is happening in Nigeria and what is happening globally, you will still give credit to Nigeria.
Why?
Importantly, when you look at the global picture, the case fatality rate is in the region of 5%. When you come to Nigeria, what is the case fatality rate? It is less than 2.3. Presently, it's 2.27. That is to show that less people are dying in Nigeria compared to other places. That is less than half of what is happening elsewhere.
What
and
about
like
the reasons?
The cases, we didn't start that way.
Yeah, tell us about the reasons. Is it because are we doing something better than the other countries, or because it came to us late and we shut down at the time we knew something was going wrong?
You know, when you are talking about COVID, you look at the different pillars. You are talking about the detection of cases and equally the treatment. People that are getting infected, are they receiving their treatment? Yes. We try as much as possible to ensure that we capture as many that are coming down with the disease, and as well, to ensure that those people that are getting infected receive proper treatment. So it's both ways you look at it. The detection is improving, and again, the people that are infected are getting better treatment. And that is one way to look at it. And again, it's a function of the people's action. You cannot, the health facility treat what comes to them. But again, we are trying our best to ensure that people don't even go to the health facilities. That is, what I mean by that is that when people don't fall sick, people are not infected, they don't go to the hospitals. But as long as you continue to get more people getting infected, it's going to be a challenge to our system. And we pray it doesn't overwhelm the system as it is now.
You know, when you say in terms of the treatment, we're getting better treatment, could you shed a little more light on that? Because, I mean, one wonders, the rate you talked about, the attitude of the people, how we're handling all of those. So what advantage is it in terms of the better treatment which you refer to?
You see, initially when this whole thing started, most states didn't have isolation center. They don't have treatment center. But over time, within a short time, most states have been able to create isolation center, treatment center, and also, like we keep on saying, COVID-19 is a new infection. Everything that is being done now is being learned as the process goes on. So, importantly, when you get people early enough presenting and coming to their facilities, they begin to receive management, you know, early also. And that's usually improves the outcome or the prognosis of the patients.
You've spoken to the percentage of fatalities, but you haven't spoken to, and I'd like you to, the percentage of recoveries. Global recovery percentage is well above 50%, but on our side here, it doesn't look like it's up to even 40%. Is there an explanation for that?
No, it does. You know, you see, there are protocols to this. It depends on how you want to place your discharge. Initially, when it started, you have to do 2 negative tests for you to be discharged. But more information are revealing that even 1 test may be good enough to discharge a patient. And again, more information are coming out again to show that after 10 days or 10 to 12 days, it is not likely that the patient who has commenced treatment infects others. The whole process of isolation is to ensure that that individual, that patient, does not infect others. Because even before 10 days, they are okay. Many of them walk around, but you still don't want to release them. It's not that they're not recovered, but you don't want them to go out and transmit the infection to other people. So what we try to do with recovery is that by the time you are leaving them to go to integrate with the societies, don't want them to continue to transmit. So that is it. Relatively, Nigeria has done well. So you can see over 10,000 people have been discharged with only about 15,000 active cases. So we are not doing badly at all.
We are doing very well, there's no doubt about that. But I'm just asking if there is an explanation for the rate of infection being so much higher than rate of recoveries. I mean, globally, it's well above 50%. Ours is not up to. That's what I'm asking. There's no doubt about how well we're doing, but the outcomes are slower than the rate of infections. Is there an explanation for it?
The explanation is still what the protocol says. If the protocol says discharge after 10 days, I bet you more than half of the people who are in isolation now will go home. But if the protocol says discharge after 1 negative test, that means the individual will have to stay a bit longer. So the way it is actually a function or what you place as your standard for the discharge. So for now, people are in isolation center. But I must tell you that for people to stay for 7, 8, 9 days without showing any symptom, without being sick, shows that they are definitely going to be discharged.
So, shed light on this. I mean, when you talk about us doing better, getting better treatment, the rate of fatality is lower than globally, because we've seen in some of those other countries where the fatality rate is higher, they're usually the elderly, they've got underlying symptoms, but we have a young population here. We've seen many people say time and again they are asymptomatic, and so naturally expect, I mean, as we know, unless there's something different, that they have a higher chance of survival. So what picture do we have in order for us not to get a false impression that, yes, we're doing something better than some others?
You are absolutely right. You see, like the whole issue about the COVID-19 is being defined. We can't say we've actually gotten the final definition, or up to now, symptoms have been collected, you know, the various signs and the manifestation of the disease. Yes, it is expected that the younger, even abroad, you still see the younger population, because those are the people that are very mobile, they move around. It's not that the only challenge there is that they have more of the older generations in circulation. But when it comes generally to those that are infected, the entire age group, none is exempted. So it affects the young, it affects the old, but the older people with comorbidities are likely to die. But if the case fatality rate is reducing, what it means is that the people that are getting to the treatment center, many of them are not dying.
Well, so what do we expect in terms of treatment or getting a vaccine or discovering any of such things? Where are we in that stage? Or are we still going to rely on what other countries discover?
You see, I want you to understand something about this issue of vaccines. It is a process, and it takes a lot of trial. That's why it's very expensive. HIV/AIDS has been with us for years, more than 40 years now. Up till now, we've not been able to get vaccine that will absolutely cure HIV or other diseases. So we are not expecting any magic bullet with COVID-19. What I will tell you is that the researchers are trying. The process of vaccine is very expensive, and it takes a long period before you can achieve. So we don't really want to rely or begin to wait for vaccine. But there are measures that have been taken globally. It's not different anywhere. These are the ones we've been emphasizing even in the country. We talk about social distancing, wearing your mask, washing your hands, you know, using all the measures that have been said. You know, I want people to believe that those are the countries that have achieved some successes. These were what they used. They didn't use vaccine. They didn't depend on the medicines that is coming, but they just prevented themselves from getting the infection.
You're saying we shouldn't put our hopes in any vaccine whatsoever, especially because you hear that the United States just recently bought almost all the supplies of remdesivir. But, you know, regarding the position we're at now, okay, we're not looking at vaccines or drugs whatsoever. We need to prevent, as it were. Is there that national strategy, really, that tells us what milestones we're trying to achieve? So this is how long it might take. We understand this is going to be, as I say, an endurance thing, not a sprint. So is that national strategy, really, that people can look at and say, okay, this is where we are, this is where we ought to get to, and this is how we need to conduct ourselves? Is there anything as such?
Absolutely. Just like has been said by the PTF, those are strategies that are being followed. There was a time there was lockdown. There was a time that there was an easing the lockdown. And so these are strategies. And I must tell you, the Honorable Minister of Health, with the entire team, the various pillars, the port health, the case management pillar, NCDC, everybody, the researchers, NIPRID, NIMA, everybody is involved in this. Yes, national strategy has been developed, and also the Honorable Minister has also instituted some renowned researchers, there are groups that are discussing all this to ensure that we maintain, we continue to ensure that over time, we gradually move from where we are to a better situation, in the sense that the disease is going to stay with us for some time. But we really want to ensure that it does not cause more harm. More people are no longer dying. So there is actually a national strategy to that effect.
When you say there's a national strategy, a strategy usually comes with, indicators that says, okay, we're doing fine, we're doing well. And that's the question here. Do we know the cases we want to be recording on a daily basis? Do we know how low we want them to get to? Because I haven't seen anything like that. I haven't seen, a document that says, well, we're trying to reach this level. I know you've talked about the lockdown, the phases and what have you, but, we need to have this KPI such that people can look at it and say, oh, we're not measuring up. We need to sit up. I have not seen anything like that. Maybe there is, so maybe you can tell us then.
You see, this is a pandemic involved. The whole world is involved, and we are not in isolation in this case. In as much as we are trying to do something, we equally look at what the other countries are doing. We look at what the researchers are bringing to the table. So we are moving gradually. There is, like I said, it's a disease. We are only dealing with it because we know the family it belongs to. And if the manifestation of that family of viruses behave this way, let's follow it this way. But I must tell you, nobody will come categorically and tell you that this is what is going to turn, what is going to be in the next. So everybody is waiting for the second phase. We are waiting for the peaking, which we say we don't need to wait to get to those steps. That's why we're saying, use the preventive measures.
Yeah, Doctor, we get your point.
But
part of what we're asking is that, we've seen some other countries there. I think the point is, what threat level are we on in order for us to measure and have an idea how we need to conduct ourselves, whether or not we're adhering to those policies or not? They thought your office should have been guiding perhaps the country or the task force, so that they could come up with something, a measure, standard of measurement or something. Is that out of place?
Not. And we actually, like the agency that is spearheading this process is NCDC, working with the entire team of the Federal Ministry of Health. Another ministry is no longer the issue of Ministry of Health. COVID goes beyond health.
Pardon me to jump in. What can you tell us about the situation in Kogi and Cross River, since you say we're doing so well?
The Honorable Minister of Health sent a team to Cross River State, and the Honorable Minister has been communicating with the Kogi team. So, you see, that's why I say it's not the issue of health alone. When you are talking about a pandemic like this, it involves all sectors. The health is involved, like Aviation just spoke now, and we have other, is an inter-ministerial thing. It affects every system. So I must tell you that the Honorable Minister is working to see a team, like I said, a team went to Cross River to see the situation of things. And also, there is a lot of discussion going on with the Kogi team. So things are actually taking shape. And I must assure you that in a few days, we'll begin to see the reports. Like Kogi State is expecting some of the testing machines. Cross River State is also expecting some. And so many things have been done to ensure that we don't leave any gap in ensuring that things are done properly, to ensure that the disease does not go beyond what we are currently experiencing.
Okay. For measurement. All right then, Dr. Ntafon, thank you for your thoughts this morning. We're back in a moment to take a look at some comments coming from you. Don't go away. Okay, welcome back. We're still getting some reactions about what Captain Sanusi said this morning, but let's take a look at this one first before we see some of the others. Idris Shehu says, this statement of us doing well and great with COVID-19 is really confusing to me. We all know, oops, that was quick. We all know that we still have a long way to go. And this pandemic is not going away soon. Government should be more strategic, give updates based on data and models to show how we're doing and more.
I think that's very important. This next one, Idris Sheo says, on the safe reopening of the airport, I hope passengers will learn to be very patient with laid down guidelines at the airports, since most of their decision will be data and scientific based, and they will be taking every safety precaution to avert spread of COVID-19.
Shoni B also says the reopening could be a little tricky. The pilots and the cabin staff could get infected and transmit to passengers. Will the staff be tested daily? I think this is one of the questions we asked the other time.
No contact.
Well,
let's quickly take a look at this one from Alabi Michael, who says, 2 months free electricity palliative, as promised by government, could not be delivered to Nigerians grappling with disruption in socio-economic activities amid COVID-19, now proposing electricity tariff hike amid petrol, transport, food, and other hikes. Well, it does look like a lot for the average Nigerian to contend with.
Well, one more from Tolu. He says, the last time I flew Qatar Airways from Sharjah, UAE to Doha, we were served food. The flight was less than 40 minutes. So that aero contractor, he seems angry.
Really?
He says that aero contractor man should get his fact right before making such statements.
We don't play with food, apparently. So there you go.
I knew this was coming somewhere. I just knew that, this was going to come. But there you go. So what's going to happen to the passenger bill of rights? I mean, the NCA has always told us, if they're going to fly you at certain points, the law is there must be refreshments.
Or maybe
And
this
if the
is just a
flight
way.
is delayed, there must be refreshments. So does this throw spanner in the works?
Maybe cutting costs.
Oh dear. So there you go. Well, that is the show today. Thank you all for watching, and keep those comments coming through. We'll see you tomorrow. I'm Chamberlain. So
I'm Kayode Okikele.
well, aviation is one sector. Let's hope other things are not going to rock us when other sectors open up. I'm Ayo Makinde. Please do keep safe.
Well, now it's not difficult to know who the foodie is amongst us. Thank you so much for watching this morning. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf. Please be responsible out there.